Hey there, friends and fellow nature journalers. In this week's episode of the Nature Journal Show, I interview one of the most well-known nature journalers of all, John Muir Laws, also known as Jack. He's our friend, he's our mentor, he's the author of multiple books, including a new one he talks about here, and he has a lot of good tips and insight on how we can all stay motivated even if we don't have as much access to the outside world because of COVID-19 pandemic shelter-in-place orders. So stay tuned towards the end. He has some amazing wisdom to share with you and motivation for all of us who are stuck at home but want to connect with nature right now. Check it out. So, Jack, how are you doing during your self-quarantine, social isolation?
Oh man, I miss my species.
Really?
It is really strange. I just realized like how much connecting with community is a part of what makes me dance,
Yeah,
and it's wonderful to be able to have time to spend with family.
yeah,
But I also feel connected to this larger family, and I really miss them. I miss you,
yeah.
um, and yeah, I miss playing with species, but I'm finding little ways to kind of rebel against it. There's a guy beside the road whose car battery died.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was driving past him.
Uh-huh.
We figured out how to help each other
Uh-huh.
and maintain social distance, and
Yeah.
it was this really sweet moment in this middle of like everybody's keeping away from each other.
Yeah.
Like, you still can help the guy with the jumper cables.
Yeah.
And so finding ways, but I miss I miss the tribe.
So, speaking of jumper cables and getting people's battery going, do you have, I think there's a lot of nature journalers who are stuck at home right now, and I think some people had this idea that they would get tons of art done during this time, and it feels to me like some people could really benefit from some of the like structured exercises and just some of the motivation and inspiration that's in the new nature journaling curriculum book, How to Teach Nature Journaling. Do you have any ideas of how people at home could use that?
Absolutely. So it's amazing that this book is available right now. So if you didn't get the message, we have made the entire text and all the visuals, the entire content of the book available for free to everyone, everywhere in the world as a free downloadable PDF. You can get that right now. And it's a book on how do you teach your family, your students, how to do nature journaling.
Uh-huh.
And even if you're just sort of thinking yourself, but I want to be able to, how do I teach myself how to do that? It's a great resource for that because it breaks things down into, here's a bunch of different exercises. You can do this. This is why we're doing this exercise. Here's great ones to get here's introductory ones, the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get those, you can then go on and build on those with developing more skills, but it breaks it out with how to what are the essentials
Mm-hmm.
for getting yourself going. At the beginning of it, we kind of envisioned like if you get a piece of furniture, one of these kind of construct it yourself things in the mail. Often there's kind of this quick start guide. How do I put this together?
Yeah.
We made one of those for getting started teaching nature journaling.
Yeah, I love that part.
That's there at the front of the book.
Yeah.
So we've got the nature journaling quick start guide. But I think that the thing that might be initially intimidating for people is that the whole book is about 300 pages long. So that is thick.
Yeah.
And if you look at that, like I know no one has time to read that whole thing right now.
Yeah.
So you might sort of jump to you don't have to read this book sequentially. You don't have to read this thing in order.
Okay.
You can kind of go into it anywhere where there's something that makes sense to you. I do suggest beginning with some of the beginning things, but if you see something else in the book that kind of really pulls you, you can do that as well. Essentially, all nature journaling is here's our kind of our breakdown of it is we have these three ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Right here, Jack cut out for a second, but he's just said, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of.
Myself to deliberately pay more attention to what I perceive. What am I observing? How to become a better observer.
Uh-huh.
The I wonder is how can I stimulate my curiosity, be able to ask better questions, and be able to retain those questions so I can do something with it. And the it reminds me of is how can I get my brain to start to be a connector? How can I be somebody who looks at something and starts to see that is like that, that is like that. What are the relationships that I see them? So our first activity in the section of getting started is I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. So I would start there.
Yeah.
And essentially what we do is we get people to do, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, and then put that out onto a piece of paper.
Right.
So when you try to do this all in your head, like you want reality, you can't handle reality. There's just too much going on at once for our brains to really absorb. So you start to get it out onto a piece of paper, and then you can, your brain is able to actually do a lot more because you're downloading a lot of your process, your thinking, your observations to a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So at the start, some structure is very, 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 very helpful. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do when I'm getting started with people is to give them, instead of saying, here's your journal, now go out and nature journal for a while and come back in 45 minutes. You will be able to do that later on once your students are totally down with this process. You can just pull up in the forest and say, let's meet back here in an hour. Everybody go. So at the start, we have very structured activities that where we take a little piece of nature.
Yeah.
And if you're working just from your own apartment building, you don't have a backyard. You're on the 5th floor, and there are resources right around you that you can use. If you go to the refrigerator right now, there's probably a ton of stuff in there that you can nature journal about. You pull out a single green bean, and you start to take it apart and study it and kind of get into the green bean. You're going to discover all this stuff about green beans that you never knew. An egg. You think you know an egg? You don't know an egg. Mm-hmm. But you start journaling with the egg, and all these questions that have been hiding in eggs for your entire life are going to come out and start to play with you. Yeah. So, and I'm using this green bean and this egg as examples because they're really familiar to us. Right.
It kind of makes me, I kind of want to make a Nature Journal Show episode, Nature Journaling in the Refrigerator.
Yeah. If you can go on a safari, in your refrigerator. Yeah. Because it's, here's the newsflash, everybody. It's not where you look, it's how you look. Yeah. And so if you train your mind to kind of get into the refrigerator, and you now got this stalk of broccoli, and you can look at that with new eyes, there's amazing stuff going on in a stalk of broccoli. And if that feels too overwhelming, cut off a little floret. Just take one little broccoli floret and prepare to have your mind blown and be open to what's new to me. What if, because your brain thinks I've seen this before, I know it. And what you want to do is push your brain to look beyond that point where you usually stop paying attention. That's where the infinite is. You've got to pierce that veil of the point where you usually stop paying attention. I like your idea of going on the adventure in your refrigerator. Yeah. I might do that too.
Yeah. So then,
but by the way, if you do have some spectacular thing, if you've got or you can go buy yourself an orchid. Right. The next time you're out, if you go to Trader Joe's, you buy yourself an orchid. Yeah. And then you've got this living thing in your house, and you can watch it change over time. Yeah. And so it's not just static. Try doing this. Get an orange. Let it start to go funky. Yeah. Right? What happens with these sort of mold things? If your apartment doesn't allow pets, take an orange or something, drop it in a jar, and put it there, and watch that thing turn to goo. Yeah. Right? And you have a new pet, and it's doing change through time, and you're going to be so. And if you can cut your chops on a floret of broccoli, then when you're out in the field and you see a Cooper's hawk take a goldfinch out of a tree, you're so prepared to observe and to document that it's easy. But let's start just with the subtleties that are right around us all the time. Now, if you do have a backyard, that's great. That's even better.
Yeah.
If your backyard opens up on a national park, I'm moving to your house, right?
Yeah.
So those, but you don't need those sort of things. So when we talk about nature, we're not just saying go to Yosemite. It's closed, right? We're saying nature is where you find it, and just start to take these if you can find the novel in the commonplace, right? If you can look at something that you think you know and see these new layers, that's where your skills, that's the edge of the knife that you want to sharpen, because that's going to allow you just to get deeper into this world. And you don't have to go to some spectacular place. You don't have to be on the Serengeti to be filled with wonder and awe.
Wow, that's awesome. I feel like that's a really fitting way to wrap up this conversation, and I think that'll really motivate everybody who is stuck at home. It makes me want to, I think I'm going to get a mold culture going or something like that to study, and nature journal would be really fun.
Yeah, or try doing this. Get a potato, put it out in the sun, and start watching it over time.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Oh man, and because we still have access to sort of the greatest organ of pleasure in the human body is this little wad of electric meat that sits right between your ears, right? And the more we can bring this little thing out to play, the world just, it opens up before us. And I think, for me, the most effective way to do that is through the pages of a journal. Because otherwise, I get into my normal, efficient, comfortable ways of looking and thinking and seeing.
Yeah.
The way that kind of gets me to the grocery store and back from the grocery store.
Yeah.
That's efficient, but it misses the splendor and the beauty of this world.
Yeah.
And this journaling allows us to pierce through that veil to the undiscovered country.
Yay, let's go there.
Let's go. So it's the undiscovered country. You and me, we've got a date in our refrigerator.
All right. Thanks, Jack. I think this is going to really help a lot of people who are stuck at home. So thanks for your time and everything.
Hey, and everybody out there, this is also a great time to kind of reach out, connect with other people. There's the community on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page right now is really, really, I'm just seeing such beauty and openness and sort of genuine support and love right there right now.
Yeah.
You might find that if you reach out and connect with that community, it can also really help you get through this time. For folks who are struggling at home, for folks who are sick, our hearts, our love is with you. We are thinking of you. We send you our love and our strength. For those of us who have the gift of not being sick in bed right now, let's take advantage of it. Grab those notebooks, sharpen those pencils, and celebrate being alive.
Yeah. All right, Jack, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be sure to get your free PDF version of How to Teach Nature Journaling or order the hard copy today. And if you got value out of this video, consider subscribing to my channel here. And if you can't wait all the way until next week for the next episode of the show, check out these 2 episodes here.